Hi, I'm Rodi Srivastava,
I'm Anuradha Nagraj.
and this is The Migration Story.
So, especially in terms of Karnataka, I think your report also mentions that a lot of funds under this welfare scheme are underused, right?
If I'm correct, it's around 60%. But in terms of the recommendation within the report, if 40% of the funds are being left out, this is a significant area where they can be diverted towards as well. These are few instances that we saw where we see that there has been a rejection of an application due to certain minor problems within the application itself. Workers usually tend to not go back to apply for that scheme again or try to access it. So them leaving their workplace and coming to file these applications, redo their application, stand in these long lines is going to directly lead to economic losses for them.
How do these key schemes that we have spoken about kind of compare in terms of their potential to evolve, and respond to climate-related risks in the future?
Hi, hello, and welcome. I am Amoolya Rajappa, a Bangalore-based academic and independent journalist, and today I'm joined by Ameena Kidwai, who leads research work under the Migrants Resilience Collaborative. It's an initiative of Jan Sahas. She has over 6 years of experience in the development sector across thematic areas of climate, migration, and social protection. So we're here to discuss more about the recently released report by MRC. It's titled Towards Climate Responsive Social Protection, Addressing Extreme Weather Risks from Urban Migrant Workers. So it looks at 6 national and state level schemes in India that can address the heightened vulnerabilities of workers impacted by extreme weather. To start the ball rolling, Ameena, can you briefly introduce the report? Who was it authored by? What did it study? And the kind of methods used for the same?
So the study was authored by my team. There was Prachi Sharma, Pratyusha Roy Chaudhary, and me, as well as Dr. C.G. Chako, who worked extensively on the research where we looked at and mapped out these different schemes. And then for this study specifically, we conducted some FGDs with migrant workers across these different locations within Bangalore, as well as some key informant interviews with different organizations who had been working within this space and working in terms of scheme access.
Okay, great. So Bangalore is among the top 10 most densely populated cities in the world now, and out of our overall population of around 12 million, an estimated 4.2 million are migrant workers. So what kind of weather-related risks are these workers facing in Bangalore, and how are these impacting their livelihoods and living conditions? So can you please reflect on this from anecdotes from your fieldwork?
We know that extreme weather events are leading to significant impacts on different worker populations, especially migrants who are already extremely vulnerable. So different extreme weather impacts that they're facing, they only heighten their vulnerability, and this is across multiple facets of their life. There are 2 areas that we've largely explored. One is at the workplace, and the second is at the household level, and that's the differentiation that we've gone by. So at the workplace, see is that there is a lot of wage loss, which is usually a result of them not being able to show up to work because of the kind of work they do, as well as wage cuts that they are facing due to not being able to perform during long working hours. Usually the kind of hours they work is 12 hours or plus, but during summer months or during rainfall, work might come to a standstill, and that will lead to a lot of them not being able to continue, or their body may not be able to endure the kind of extreme weather that is there, which is leading to them maybe working lesser hours in comparison. And when that happens, it's not like they might get wages for the entire day. There will be cuts, or they will only be paid for the number of hours that they are working in comparison. And apart from this, we've also heard of certain instances of job losses during this period, especially in some occupations where there is a very direct impact of extreme weather events such as rains or floods. For example, in the construction sector, where certain jobs are performed basis the climate. So, for example, painting. During rains, painting comes to a complete standstill. The unpredictability of when rainfall might happen in this, they can't predict when they will come to a standstill. Moving to household level, one is, of course, the health issues that they're facing, which are rampant. During summer months, we see an increase in respiratory illnesses as well as gastric issues. And in more severe cases, we see heat strokes as well. There's also, apart from this, an increase in instances of vector-borne diseases during this time or even during rainy season, such as malaria, dengue. These health impacts, apart from impacting the well-being of workers, they're also leading to potential wage loss in cases. So a lot of workers may not be able to show up to work if they're facing these kind of health issues. And they're also facing extreme increased cost burdens as well during this time period. So, of course, a ripple effect is happening across these different aspects. The second, within household level impacts that they're facing is food insecurity. So in our survey as well, we saw that 70% people had mentioned that they were facing food security related challenges. Deeper into this during the FGDs, what we understood was firstly as a consequence of the wage loss that they're facing during these extreme weather events, it's of course leading to them spending much lesser on food or reducing their food intake. Apart from that, the kind of ration that they're getting, that's also getting spoiled much faster during these different events. Now, when ration gets spoiled, that means they need to buy more. They're not earning enough wages. It may lead to them cutting down on the kind of food that they're taking. Apart from these two, we've also seen higher instances of individuals facing water and sanitation related problems. Of course, these are already issues in the kind of places that they live, but they just get heightened during this period.
Thank you. And it's interesting the livelihood example you gave of the painting jobs in the construction sector. So you're saying the unpredictability kind of directly is linked to the days of non-work, right? So yes, that's interesting. And so how should we understand maladaptive coping in this context? I think this is something that the report discusses with several examples. And what does it reveal about how support systems function during climate-related disruptions in the megacities of today?
So when we talk about assistance, especially in the report in terms of our data, what we're really talking about is the emergency relief that they're receiving, not the long-term support or through different schemes. Now, as a result of this lack of emergency relief, especially for slow onset events, we are seeing that a lot of workers are now relying on maladaptive coping strategies, which are going to affect them either in the short term or in the long term. So, one example which I'll share over here, based on what we've written in the report, is the amount of debt that they're taking. When wage loss happens and the household expenses increase, they are taking up loans or borrowing from friends and family, which is leading to them getting trapped in debt cycles. And this is not only in the cities, but in source locations also during agriculture failure or crop failures at their source location. So they're already coming here with debt, and it's just mounting when they're facing income losses for the precise reason that they came here. Now, when we look at immediate policies or support or assistance that is minimal or low, especially in the context of emergency relief or in the context of slow onset changes, and especially those that are targeted towards informal communities. However, there are a lot of social protection schemes, and that's the reason we focused on them for this report as well, to look at the direct benefits that workers are getting. So while most of these schemes might not be having a climate-linked angle at this point, but indirectly during these periods as well, or any external shock, they are significantly supporting workers.
The report also highlights several good practices in social protection for migrant workers, right? So, can you sort of reflect on some of the key national and state policies that support migrants during weather-related disruptions? Like you said, the climate safety net has to be automatically kind of inbuilt into the existing scheme. So, how do these measures work in practice among the existing schemes?
So, in the report, as I've mentioned, we've only really focused on social protection, not policies per se. Even in terms of good practices, what we were looking for was social protection schemes that are being practiced nationally and globally by governments, to be specific, to be able to give these examples that this is already happening. And from what we saw, especially if we talk in terms of India and the practices from here, one of the biggest examples over here is Manrega, which already has inbuilt within the scheme design, where they provide additional employment days during drought periods in rural areas. Apart from this, something new that has come up in the last 1 or 2 years is this parametric insurance for rainfall season by the Nagaland government, and this is in collaboration with Swiss Re. Apart from this, globally also we are seeing a lot of examples in terms of cash transfer program or insurance program, some of them directed towards health and the impacts that they're facing in extreme weather events by governments to support communities in climate distress.
So, what are the main barriers at both the user and systems level? I think that's the approach the report takes to discuss barriers for social protection using different schemes, right? So, what are some of these barriers and how do these challenges kind of come together in practice, especially in case of migrant workers?
When looking at challenges within schemes, especially from a worker perspective, we've sort of divided them between two areas. One is the demand side challenges and the other is the supply side. Now, within demand side, our understanding has been in terms of accessibility and awareness. What we've seen is that there is a severe lack of knowledge around specific schemes among workers, even if in some cases they know about this scheme, but the challenge then comes in terms of the functioning or the process required for understanding, for uptaking that scheme, finding an application for that scheme. There is also one more challenge within the demand side. And these are few instances that we saw where we see that there has been a rejection of an application due to certain minor problems within the application itself or certain documentation missing. Workers usually tend to not go back to apply for that scheme again or try to access it. It's important to understand over here also that population that we're talking about, each for them because their wages or income is based on that. There is no idea of a leave or compensatory leave also within the work that they do. So them leaving their workplace and coming to file these applications, redo their application, stand in these long lines is going to directly lead to economic losses for them. So the barrier really becomes if they get a rejection, they don't get a proper understanding of what the reason is and how quickly can they rectify that. Usually they don't end up trying to access that scheme again. In terms of supply side, I think the two main challenges, and they're cross-cutting across themes that I want to highlight, is one around portability of schemes, which is a major barrier for migrant workers specifically. So while in most functioning of these schemes, portability is inbuilt into design, it might not be talked about extensively, but either function will be there. But you look at it in practice on ground, that's where the challenges come in. The second is around documentation. So again, when you're talking about migrants, they're coming from source locations to destination locations. They might have documentation proof from their source location and not have any local addresses at destination or within these cities. So therefore, applying for the scheme becomes a challenge. Many times the requirement is such that they need to provide a local address proof. If not, they can of course go back to their source location and apply for these schemes, but usually that's not something they would do at that moment. But maybe if they go back during their holidays or something, they might think about it, but it's not going to be an immediate process for them.
Right. So, how do gender roles and kind of household structures further influence this access to welfare benefits among migrant workers?
So this wasn't really the scope of the research that we did, but because we looked at one scheme which is called Gruha Lakshmi, it's a Karnataka-based scheme, which is a direct cash transfer scheme for women in Karnataka. We did see certain challenges in access for that. So one of the requirements for eligibility is that the woman has to be listed as a household head under the ration card. Now, what we overall understand is in most of these cases, the male member is listed as a household head. Now, in schemes like this, it becomes a huge challenge for them to be able to access the overall scheme. And this is actually a very great scheme because what we're hearing in terms of the kind of things that women workers are being able to do with the money that is coming in and support or cope with the challenges of extreme weather, it can really support them, but a lot of them are losing out on that access because of this documentation related challenge. And it obviously plays back to how gender roles work in the overall structure. And this is what is leading to them not being able to access the scheme.
Yeah, so in context of Gruha Lakshmi, I think it's a classic case of how eligibility kind of curbs access, right? And like you mentioned, it's a great scheme. The fact that quite lump sum, I mean, how the amount gets credited to your account and what they do with it is sort of directly translates into some kind of agency, but not being eligible because they're not household heads kind of curbs their access and makes social protection challenging.
Listeners, we will be right back after this short break.
This is Manikapur in the Ganjam district of Orissa, where every household has at least one member working in the Gulf. When Israel and the United States struck Iran and the retaliations began, this village held its breath. The village has 750 households. According to its sarpanch, nearly 700 of its people are currently working abroad in the Gulf, in West Asia, and as far as Russia.
Watch the full video on how the Gulf crisis has cast its shadow on this Odisha village, only on the Migration Stories YouTube channel.
So coming to the scheme-specific reflections, I mean, obviously you've picked 3 all-India schemes and 3 state-specific schemes. Under the Ayushman Bharat and PMJ scheme, the report speaks about delay in service provision and infrastructural issues kind of further reducing access for migrant workers. This is something I have observed in my reportage as well. So during the fieldwork I was doing for this story on access to vaccination for migrant children, increasingly many parents express the fact that they're not very comfortable with the government setups, mostly because of negligence, indifference, long delays, etc. So can you please elaborate on this? What is this experience like for migrant workers and how does it make it more challenging in terms of social protection?
I think there are 3 areas over here. One is, of course, that refusal when they go into access the scheme, which becomes a huge challenge, and then they don't want to go back over there. And usually, we've talked about this in the report as well. Actually, they don't want to go to government hospitals because of the previous treatment that they might have got over there. And of course, the delays and timely care is also a big issue within that. There's also, apart from this, there is this challenge in understanding how Ayushman Bharat works. So it's not only connected to government hospitals, but also to private sector hospitals, where there is a direct partnership between these two. Now, the challenge is this lack of understanding means that they don't really try to access these private hospitals. And when they do, then there are another set of challenges that end up appearing in that case. So, I mean, in terms of what you've also understood, the perception within workers of government hospitals is extremely strong right now, and that's why they're not trying to access it as well. But apart from that, of course, there is this lack of understanding within the schemes, and of course, the onus is not only on them. More information also needs to be shared around the scheme for them to know how to access.
Right. Under the Building and Other Construction Workers Welfare Board's scheme of Karnataka, so were there any existing benefits that you saw that could be usable by migrant workers during these climate shocks like floods or heat waves?
So, not to my knowledge in terms of the Karnataka BOCW board, though within the health insurance scheme under the board, there is certain inclusions for weather-related illnesses, but that's also in terms of hospitalization. Now, apart from moving away from the Karnataka board, there are certain examples across India where the board has implemented emergency cash transfers or support for workers during these time periods. For example, in Delhi, the board actually gave a cash transfer due to the AQI related construction bans that happened in the city. This was, I think, last year, last to last year. I'm not sure about the year, but this was implemented where we already knew that they're going to be facing a lot of wage loss, and it was directly implemented by the board. So these things are happening in other places, but again, it's an emergency trigger that happens. What we are suggesting in the report is also that why don't you build it into the design? That when something like this happens, what kind of support workers can receive.
Right. So, especially in terms of Karnataka, I think your report also mentions that a lot of funds under this welfare scheme are underused, right?
So, actually, in terms of the Karnataka board across India, Karnataka is actually doing a very good job, and they do have a much higher and stronger utilization rate in comparison. However, despite that, of course, there is a significant proportion which remains unspent. If I'm correct, it's around 60%, which they are already spending based on the last report, the CAG report that was released. Now, within this also, why they are not being able to spend the entire amount, the board is also facing significant challenges in terms of verifying worker data. The last CAG report only reported that there was a high number of fake or ineligible registrations that were happening, which were leading to this at some level. So, of course, the challenges are on both sides. There are a lot of people who might not have worked in construction are trying to access the scheme, and when they come across it, they may not be able to get the benefit there as well. But in terms of the recommendation within the report, if 40% of the funds are being left out, this is a significant area where they can be diverted towards as well.
Sure. 40% is also a huge amount, but that's also telling of, like if you say Karnataka is among the most progressive in terms of implementation, we can imagine the money being spent elsewhere. Great. Moving on. So in the context of PDS and more specifically Annabhagya Yojana in Karnataka, so what was the immediate fallback for those workers you spoke to who did not have access? So were they buying at market rates? Were they skipping meals or borrowing money with huge interest rates? I mean, because the report mentions all sorts of anecdotes. So, and what recommendations does the report make in this regard? Because you spoke about food insecurity earlier.
So, in terms of PDS specifically, we don't see too many access or awareness related issues. It is a flagship scheme, and there is a general understanding around that. Even for Annabhagya, surprisingly, we did not see any awareness related issues. People understood it and knew this was a supplementary ration scheme itself. Where the challenge comes in for Annabhagya is access for interstate migrants. Now, the scheme is only directed towards intrastate or locals of Karnataka, and it is not for people coming from other states. But however, Bangalore has a large migrant population. That's where we see the challenge. That a lot of them actually spoke about how the scheme, Annabhagya specifically, would really help them during this time period and they're not being able to access it. For intrastate migrants, we didn't see many challenges in terms of access because they had the documentation, they had the ration. When we're looking at recommendations specifically, we focused on two areas over here. One is around dynamic eligibility. So, what we are suggesting is that expand coverage of this scheme during extreme weather events. That means also to interstate migrants within Annabhagya and in PDS also expand beyond the API cards that you're creating so that people who are facing or being pushed into financial distress during this period, because there's a thin line, right, between BPL, APL, and when such an external shock happens, many times they can be pushed towards the lower end as well. So expand your coverage during that period. Don't keep it restricted to these specific cards or holders of these cards. Now, there are certain examples within this as well where it has happened as an emergency trigger, where free ration has been distributed. Specific example is from Kerala during the floods in 2018, where non-priority households were also given ration, and it did really help them during that period. The second recommendation that we're focusing on, and that brings us back to the DPT part as well, is around prioritizing in-kind food assistance over DBT. So, since the main goal of Annabhagya is to address food insecurity and providing food grains, and usually providing this in-kind food assistance can be more helpful in comparison to cash transfer. Now, when there are, of course, challenges why that's happening, but when certain cash is coming to workers, a lot of people are losing out on that benefit. One is people whose accounts might not be connected, or it might not be the correct information. A lot of them don't receive this money. Apart from that, also what rates they're getting is at the subsidized rates that are being provided under the ration scheme. Now, when they go to buy similar ration from the money that they're getting from these stores, that's where the challenge comes in, and they will get a reduced quality or reduced quantity from the amount that they're already getting.
Right. Speaking of Gruha Jyoti, it's one of Karnataka government's flagship schemes, of course. So the report mentions that most workers you spoke to did not directly benefit from this scheme, despite being aware of it. Of course, awareness was clearly not the problem here. What proportion of migrant households have access and why? What was the problem in this case?
So this was part of our quality investigation, and we don't have access to the overall data in terms of who is receiving this scheme. But in terms of the focus group discussions that we did and the different migrants that we spoke to, we saw almost no one had access to this. Now, within conversations, the main challenges that we saw in terms of access to this scheme was one, that usually the meters were in the landlord's name. So, even though the scheme is accessible by tenants, but they require proper documentation in terms of a lease or rent agreement, which is very rare in these kind of informal settlements.
Right.
That's why a lot of them were not being able to access the scheme. The second was the kind of setting that these households are in the informal settlement. They're usually shared meters in a building or housing. So even if they do get this scheme, overall, if the bill is coming for 10 households in one building, it's not going to, the units that are going to be free will not really cover the overall cost also. So it's just being divided into the number of households rather than checking for individual consumption. And then lastly, I think the challenge why it's not reaching these areas is because the scheme is not specifically targeted towards informal settlements overall. So if there is specific targeting of these vulnerable areas, then only access will significantly improve. But if that's not happening, the scope for it reduces significantly.
Good. So based on your report, I mean, now we're moving towards more general reflections from the entire report. So how do these key schemes that we have spoken about kind of compare in terms of their potential to evolve, like, and respond to climate related risks in the future? So you spoke about Narega, where climate induced risks are inbuilt, but not in terms of the schemes that we have studied or looked at as part of the report. So what's the scope to scale up and evolve?
The reason for picking these schemes was not only linking them to the kind of impacts that workers are facing, but also in terms of ease of access and their prevalence across different states within the country. There are also flagship schemes which are getting significant budgets and significant importance as well. And they're already reaching, to a certain extent, large populations within the country. Now, currently, even without the purpose of supporting communities in climate distress, they're already supporting them in some ways or helping them during this period. And that's what we understood. What we are suggesting is very minor tweaks within design, not to create new schemes which will require more work as well as resources, but create these within the existing design, create these tweaks, improve service delivery of existing schemes, as well as create triggers for response during climate related impacts or challenges. They can significantly work better, even though they are already, but they can significantly improve access if these things are kept in mind.
Sure. So if you had to pick one scheme that could most quickly be adapted into the climate safety net, which among the six would it be, and what exact change would you implement to begin with?
So I do think that based on the schemes that we've selected, they're all relevant, and changes or modification won't require too much work or resources, and for most of them. Though if I have to pick one, picking one is actually very difficult over here. But if I have to pick one, it would be maybe adding a sub-scheme under BOCW, which is for construction workers. They're one of the most impacted workers during extreme weather events because they're working outdoors. So designing and implementing maybe cash support schemes or transfers within the overall design, because a lot of them do have access to the BOCW card as well, will support a large population of workers who are in distress. I mean, there are already different pilot projects which are running by different non-profit organizations, such as parametric insurance also, which typically function based on temperature triggers, whether it's heat or rainfall. And we've seen examples also, as I shared earlier, in terms of state governments doing this, taking up parametric insurance for their populations. So this could be something that significantly supports workers in distress during this time period, because the different types of impacts right now in terms of wage loss, wage cuts, and job losses are largely being seen in this sector.
Can you explain more regarding the parametric insurance bit? Because I think that's of key importance in terms of how schemes can evolve to cater better to floating migrant population across cities.
So, parametric insurance is actually, it works on a temperature threshold or a trigger. I think last year we had implemented the heat parametric insurance as well at MRC, where we did a pilot with construction workers across a few areas where we are implementing the project. And within that, once we had set a temperature threshold, and when it breached that, that's when the payout would happen to workers without too many challenges. So in a lot of these insurance schemes, especially such as for crop loss, there are the kind of techniques used are very different in comparison to parametric insurance, where it becomes like a direct DBT of sorts to workers as soon as that threshold is reached.
Good. Thank you. Thank you so much, Ameena. Thank you for your time. And we've definitely benefited from all the insights you've shared in context of the report. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Check out our website www.themigrationstory.com for more content. You can subscribe to our podcast on YouTube and Spotify. The audio editing and sound design is by Akshay Ramuhalli. Stay tuned for more stories on migration.
The Migration Story.